Halfway around the world from North America lies the vast continent of Asia. Asia is bordered by oceans on the north, east, and south. On the west, the Ural Mountains, the Ural River, the Caspian Sea, the Caucasus Mountains, and the Black Sea mark the boundary between Asia and Europe. The two continents make up a great landmass, sometimes called Eurasia. But even without Europe, Asia is the largest of all the continents. It is larger in area than North and South America combined, and contains more than half the people of the earth. In this single landmass that extends from below the equator to north of the Arctic Circle, you can expect to find a wide range of living conditions. There are great areas of frozen tundra, tropical rainforests, and vast deserts. In Asia, we will find people living under primitive conditions, farming as their ancestors have done for thousands of years. We will also find modern city dwellers whose ways of life are not much different from ours. We'll find jet airliners following modern airways, and camel caravans following ancient trade routes. These are some of the contrasts in the vast continent of Asia. One way of studying the nearly 40 countries that make up Asia is by dividing the continent into 4 large physical regions. The farthest north is a tundra region. Then there are regions of forests, pastures and farms, and dry lands. So here are the 4 regions we're going to study. Let's look first at the frozen tundra region. There are few people in this area, mainly nomadic reindeer herders, hunters and trappers. There are cities, though, like this one, Norilsk, in Siberia, north of the Arctic Circle. But for the most part, the tundra region is a vast, desolate area. Bordering the tundra is the northern forest region. These 2 regions together make up most of that portion of the Soviet Union that lies in Asia. In the northern forest region, or Taiga, there is hunting and trapping in the evergreen forests and along the many rivers. Lumbering is an important industry in the Taiga. Here on the Yenisei River that flows through Siberia into the Arctic Ocean, a great raft of logs is on its way to a lumber mill. In Siberia, trees of the northern forests are used mainly for paper making and construction. The rivers of the Taiga are important sources of fish. These people are citizens of Siberia in the Soviet Union. Remember, these are the northern forest lands of Asia. The southern forest lands of Asia are tropical rainforests. They are found mainly in the countries of Southeast Asia. Rainforests are found in the many countries that make up both the mainland and the neighboring islands. Indonesia and the Philippines are among these island nations. The forest lands of Southeast Asia are important not just for timber. Rubber trees are grown on large plantations in Malaysia and Indonesia. They produce 90% of the world's natural rubber. The soil is fertile here, so where trees are cleared from the land in the forest regions, farming can be done. In this region of tropical rainforests, we find some of the major cities of Asia with populations in the millions. Rangoon in Burma, Bangkok in Thailand, Saigon in South Vietnam, Singapore at the tip of the Malay Peninsula, Jakarta in Indonesia, and Manila in the Philippines. The forest lands are not the most heavily populated in Asia, but they contain far more people than the dry lands of Asia, made up of deserts and mountains and high plateaus. Here are the dry lands, the third large region of Asia. The United States could easily be placed in this vast region with room to spare. Among the mountains are the Himalayas. Here are the highest peaks on Earth. North of the Himalayas, the mountains broaden into a region of high plateaus and deserts. Winds blowing across these lands have lost much of their moisture, and little rain falls. This part of the dry lands is sometimes called Central Asia. It is made up mainly of Nepal, Tibet, Xinjiang, and Mongolia. This is the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. Camels are still important here, as they were in the days of Genghis Khan. The people who live in these vast desert lands of Central Asia are mainly nomads. The southwest part of the dry lands of Asia is usually called the Middle East. The countries of the Middle East are a bridge land between Asia, Europe, and Africa, and extend from Turkey on the west to Afghanistan on the east, to Saudi Arabia on the south. Here are the cities of Istanbul and Tehran. In these ancient lands, rural living conditions are usually quite primitive. Shepherds still graze their herds of camels, goats, and sheep. These are nomad people who must move their flocks to new pastures every few days. Few people per square mile live in the arid regions of Asia, where life has not changed much since ancient times. Ruins of ancient cities, like these of Babylon, are reminders that one of man's earliest civilizations, in Mesopotamia, began here in the dry lands of the Middle East, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, perhaps 5,000 years ago. Today, the land is not as fertile as it once was. But where there is water in these southern dry lands, crops can be grown. Here we will find dates, olives, pomegranates, figs and citrus fruits in the marketplaces. In this dry region of the Middle East, major religions had their beginnings. Ruins of an ancient synagogue stand on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. Judaism began in this part of the world. Here, too, are the beginnings of Christianity, as well as Islam, whose followers are called Muslims. Two other major religions, Hinduism and Buddhism, had their beginnings in India, which is in the fourth major region of Asia. This is the pastures and farms region. This part of it is called Southern Asia. Here are the countries of India and East and West Pakistan. The region of pastures and farms extends into Eastern Asia. Here are the countries of China and Formosa, North and South Korea, and Japan. The pastures and farms region also includes much of Southeast Asia. In this region, most of the people of Asia are found, with great populations concentrated in the fertile river valleys and deltas. In China, with more than 700 million people, the main rivers are the Huang, or Yellow River, the Yangtze, and the Sea River. China has more people than any other country in the world. Its main cities, with populations in the millions, are Chungking, Canton, Wuhan, Tianjin, Peking, and Shanghai. This is Shanghai, a seaport on the east coast of China, where the Yangtze River empties into the China Sea. Shanghai has a population of about 8 million. In Japan, the metropolitan area of Tokyo has about 12 million people. In Southeast Asia, the main rivers are the Mekong, Menam, Salween, and Irrawaddy. In Southern Asia, the main rivers are the Brahmaputra, Ganges, and Indus. Here on the rivers and along the coasts in the pasture and farmland region, we find the cities of Calcutta and Bombay, each with more than 5 million people in their metropolitan areas, and Karachi, Madras, and Delhi. To see an example of farm life in these countries, let's look first at a farmer in India. This farmer is one of the 450 million people of India, the second most highly populated country in the world. He is a poor man, working long, hard hours with primitive farm tools. He depends on his own hand labor and on the labor of animals to raise rice and millet in his small field. But even with his hard work, an Indian farmer's field barely provides enough food for himself and his family. For farmers in Southeast Asia, life is not as hard. Rice production is much higher than in Southern Asia. Southeast Asia exports much of the rice that it raises. It is the most important rice-producing region in the world. This grain is the main crop in most of the farmlands of Asia, where 90% of the world's rice is grown. Rice needs a warm climate and a great deal of water. In southern and southeastern Asia, the summer monsoon winds from the warm oceans bring great amounts of rain to the farmlands. Nearly 80% of all Asians are poor, hard-working farmers or grazers with a low standard of living. When machinery is used to irrigate the rice fields, it is often powered by human labor. Water is being lifted into this rice paddy. Primitive threshing methods are still common. Even on big projects, work is often done by massed human labor without power-driven machines. But changes are taking place in Asia. This is especially true in Japan. Agriculture is becoming mechanized here, changing centuries-old patterns of life. Motor-operated pumps raise water to irrigate the fields. Lightweight motor-driven threshers are becoming common. Small tractors are replacing animals in the fields. In many parts of Asia, there are signs of similar changes. Factories in China, steel mills in India, a major air terminal in Thailand. All these point up the idea of change. Industrialization is growing. Raw materials like oil and important minerals are making this possible. But the changes are taking place very slowly in Asia as a whole because of the geographic barriers and the historical and political differences that divide the countries. and the many peoples of Asia. The lives of the people vary tremendously, depending on where they live in Asia, the largest continent of the Earth.